group, you are going to find a number of files. If you're interested, if you have a little time, go and check. You know where to find the file section in Facebook? Do you? Or not? Somebody answer, please.
No.
No, right. You know that on top it says posts, photos, well, a number of things, and then you have the famous three dots. Three or four, I don't know how many. So you click there. I cannot open it now because if I open it, it's going to take forever. But if we have time by the end of the lesson, I do it. You click on that, on those three buttons, and there's a part that says files. You click on the files, and there are a lot of files in that group. Because um I had linguistics for like 3 or 4 years. Found it good, Luisina. Good, good. So you see that there you have a lot of material. Some material is going to be useful for psycholinguistics as well, right? Okay. Or I upload the quizzes or I don't know, assignments. Sometimes I upload the assignments that you need to. Well, when we used Facebook more frequently, like I told you. But now it's the only solution because if you are not in the campus, how can I communicate with you? I cannot, copy your mails one by one. I could, but it takes too much time, and what we don't have is time. Okay. Well, so let's go to the unit. The unit is called the properties of language. The properties of language, depending on the edition you have, it's going to be one chapter or another, or it's going to be within one unit or another. The ones who have downloaded the latest editions of Yule's book, you told me that is within the chapter of animal communication versus human communication. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So have you read the introduction to that? So that we mention briefly why this topic is there.
Yes, first of all, we have to make like a big acceleration or differentiation, and that is that every creature in the world can communicate. But there are differences between that kind of communication. Obviously, that creatures can communicate within their own species.
Mhm. Yeah, but do you call that a language?
No.
No, you say that there is a means of communication, a means of communication. But for you to say that a system of communication is a language, there are a number of properties that that system of communication must have, right? Okay, and that is what we're going to see today. So you see that because many times when we ask students, what do we use language for? Says, well, why do we have language? And the answer most of the times is to communicate, right? That is the answer. But to communicate is very broad, So you say you can communicate many other things without using any type of language. You have also sign language, what we call sign language. No, so if somebody makes, sorry for the sign, but it's very popular. If somebody does this, what do you mean? This is not good.
Loser.
Loser. Okay, right. So is that a means of communication?
Yes.
Yes. Through what? Gesture. Gesture. That is what we call I'm going to type. Ay, lento al punto de ganas de agarrar la computadora y hacer flying computer, tirarla, allá tirar algo así, pues allá está la ventana. Tirarla por la ventana, te juro, te van a hacer la flying computer. Es hiper... No, ¿sabes por qué debe estar hiper lento? Porque mucha gente debe haber hecho lo que lo que nosotros estamos haciendo ahora. Se pasaron al modo virtual, ¿sí? Porque nunca estuvo tan lenta a la mañana.
Encima fue como que pasó la pandemia y bueno, en las compañías de Wi-Fi vamos a hacer que ande mal de nuevo el Wi-Fi, no arreglan nada. Al menos a
Claro.
mí Hyperton me empezó a andar mal recién este año. El año pasado me anduvo de 10.
Ah, mira. Sí, a mí nunca me anduvo de 10, pero bueno, digamos, era un
Bueno,
poquito más
mejor que cero,
tolerable,
claro.
claro, sí, tolerable. Digamos, llamémosle tolerable. Yo me cambié de empresa porque la que tenía era un desastre. Esta estaba andando un poco mejor, pero bueno. Calculo que es lo que se dice la que anda menos mal. No mejor, menos mal. O sea, right. Okay. So you got this idea of gesture. We have communication through gesture, which is not, I think we said it the other class, is not international, you know, because we may think that gestures are international. Did we mention that or not?
Yes.
Yes. That is not a universal means of communication. The same gesture, you have to be careful, may mean different things to different cultures. So you have to be culture aware. That is Italian gestures. Yes. And I think I mentioned the one from Portuguese. That is the one that somebody told me. Did I mention the one about Portuguese? That one say exquisito in Portugués quiere decir asqueroso, right? So it's the opposite. You have to be culture aware. Culture aware. You have to bear culture awareness as to what gestures and a number of things represent to different cultures. Do not assume that they're universal, right? Okay. So going back to, we say that the human being is the only creature in creation, like somebody said before, who is said to have language. Right? So, this system of communication that is called language has certain properties. Not any system of communication is called language, right? Okay? So, and he says unique properties, that the properties are unique, are for humans and humans only, right? Okay. Displacement. The first feature I have here in my edition is displacement. Does somebody or can somebody define or comment on what displacement implies?
Basically, humans are capable of talking about things or events that are not present in the moment, in the here and now, while animals can't do that. The example that the book gave us
Mhm.
was in the case of the cat. When you, I don't know, you touch your cat, he's going to meow.
Yeah.
But
Meow. Say meow, meow.
yes, meow.
Mhm.
But if you ask it, well, him or her,
Her.
where have she been or whatever, it's going to do the same.
Right. Yes, of course. The meowing thing is not going to be much different and probably higher. Yeah, your pet. Yes, that's what I heard. You know, I have a dog now, only one. The other one died at the beginning of the year. And they say that when you scold a dog, you say, "What have you done? What have you done?" That you, because the dog has done something wrong, the dog looks at you like, "What? Are you crazy? I don't know what you're talking about." Here, they don't say that, but they look at you like, huh? Because the dog, or any other animal, but in is easier with a dog, right? Uh, does cannot think in any other manner than the present. So if your dog broke your pair of shoes and tore apart your pair of shoes, or I don't know, spilled something or destroyed something in your home, and you show the dog, and you tell him or her, what have you done? What have you done? They look at you like, I don't really know, because they cannot think in terms of past or future either. If you take the dog, wait for me, I'll take you to a park soon. Exactly, neither retrospectively nor forward either. And because you tell your dog, wait a minute, I'll take you to a park soon. What is soon? They don't understand. Neither future neither past nor future. They only have a present and here and now, right? Whereas human beings can think about what is not around their immediate, in their immediate surrounding in regards of time. So we have this ability to talk about the past or the future.
And also, what it said, the book said that even we can think of things that are not real,
Exactly.
like I don't
Exactly.
know, like making up a story that didn't happen.
Mhm. Yes, the ability of lying. The ability of lying is human, right? Yes. But apart from that, something which is not real, fictional worlds. Here it says fictional. That's why we have novels, many things that are made up. They are the projection of somebody's mind. In that world, mm, things are believable. But why do we believe them? Because we have this possibility of abstraction, and like creating fictional things that are not tangible, which is different from what we read in the previous class about the origins of language. This obviously came up later in the development of the human being, because you remember at the beginning, how did human beings communicate? In the beginning, not at the beginning, in the beginning.
Orally.
Yes, but about what? When we had the growling, remember that period? Onomatopoeic words, and they were mostly related to what? Yeah, growls, but they related. Did they relate to things that were abstract?
No,
Did they have
to food, to threats.
exactly to the ones that were immediate to their environment? So the growl, you said growl, it's okay, but the growl referred to like beware, a tiger is coming. Let's say, okay. So were things that were immediate. Or if they came up with one sound that represented rock, let's say. Mm? But they didn't have a word for example, idea. Mm? That came later with the development of the human being and the development of the brain. Okay? Yes? Remember that? Here when it says, um, let me see, the origins of language. Where is it? Data. The Bow Wow theory, natural source, imitations of natural sounds. That you said they were onomatopoeic, mm, but they were unable to mention abstract notions. And that came later with the development of the human being. Right. So this question of displacement is clear, isn't it? Yes?
Yes.
Any doubts? No. Right. Okay. Then this question of arbitrariness. Arbitrariness. That is sometimes not so easy to understand. You have discussed de Saussure, de Saussure, Ferdinand de Saussure with any teacher? No? That this again is different from the origins of human communication. Lo voy a escribir Ferdinand. Ferdinand. No, you must remember. If you discussed, you must remember because they make it a point. Ferdinand. Las letras van lento, mira. Ferdinand. Because he was the one to talk about what we say the linguistic sign. We're going to see that some other lesson where we discuss the Saussure's theory. He's a very important linguist. He contributed with a number of things that are the basis of linguistics. I don't have a tissue. But basically, let's comment on arbitrariness without referring to him. Now, if I, for example, this that I have here, I don't know, I think it's getting hot or the humidity, but I'm kind of sweating here. Why do we call this a tissue?
Because we learned that it's called that way, but there is no real connection with the meaning.
Right. There's nothing in the tissue that is different from onomatopoeia, you know. Onomatopoeia, there is some relation between the sound and what it means, right? Is the only linguistic units that there is a relationship between the sound made and what is implied by that. But once again, we have to bear in mind that onomatopoeia changes from language to language, because every language represents within their phonetic system, obviously. We mentioned this issue that in Spanish we laugh, ha, 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 and in English we say, right, ha, ha, ha. And to me, somebody mentioned something else, but when I was having some online training with teachers from Brazil, they wrote this as laughter, that I don't know what it means, but this is what they wrote. That represented laughter. Huh? No idea why they represented laughter in that manner. Okay, but somehow or another, there is a relationship between the sound and what is meant by that. But in many other objects, risos. What's the meaning of risos? Means laughter. Thank you, Valentina. Well, but it's not related to onomatopoeia. It's related to the word, right? Because if we say ha, 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 or ha, 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 or whatever, what you're trying to do is represent the sound made. But in this case, it's related to the word, but not the sound, you see? So in Portuguese,
It's like there is no relationship between the word and the meaning, or the expression and the meaning by itself.
right, or there is a relationship. There is a relationship because there is a relationship that was established by the community. And then we go to this question of cultural importance, right? But there's not that there is no relationship, is that there's nothing in the object in itself which tells you that it should be called one way or another.
Yes, in the text it says that there is no natural connection.
Natural connection, precisely. And if you start comparing languages, you say mesa, table, mesa, table, why mesa, why table. And there's nothing in the object which tells you that it should be called one way or another. Mm? There is there is a mutual agreement within a community that, okay, let's call this that way. Okay, has anybody read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't, honestly. I read pieces here and there. It's like a goal, but I never get to that goal. There's one part I read that says that I think it was the mouse or one of the characters says, well, I'm going to call this any way I want. Remember that part? Like I say, this is a mug, right? Can you see the mug? 3 horas para mostrar el mug. Okay, this is a mug. I am very proud of this mug. A ver si lo ven. Who is he? Do you know? ¿Quién es? Ni idea. No es Einstein, ¿eh? ¿No saben quién es? ¿Lo reconocen? Mark Twain. Mark Twain. Have you heard about Mark Twain? A famous American writer. He's the one who wrote Tom Sawyer. Which other one? Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain. Mark Twain is very popular. You know, I don't know why. Mark Twain, Albert Einstein, and there are a number of people who are very popular for sayings in Facebook, Instagram, in the social media. Have you seen that they was said by Mark Twain?
Very quotable people that will never know if they actually said them.
Precisely. We will never know if they actually said that or it's just like somebody's invention. Well, no, this is what Mark Twain said. He says, irreverence is the championship of liberty. That's what it says here. I read it again. Irreverence is the championship of liberty. So supposedly he said that. Well, anyhow, if I call this a mug, right? And we say, no, listen, here there are 24 people with me, right? 23, sorry. 23 with me. So, okay, listen, guys, we're going to call this plip. No? Okay? Do we agree? Plip. Right. Now, we go away from this classroom and we go to a store and we say, can you please sell me a plip? Will they know what we're talking about?
No.
No, because what is there for a thing to be called one way or another?
A social agreement.
A social agreement of the whole community. The whole community decides that this is going to be called mug, and then you say, what is the mug? And then you somebody else, that's a mug. That's a mug. I need more mugs. Let's buy a mug. And you start, everybody knows, and that is the way that we all agree. If not, it would be chaotic. You know, if every single one of us named things in a different manner, there wouldn't be an agreement whatsoever, and would be like in a crazy world, crazier than now.
Yeah,
Right?
you know, when I have two little cousins,
Mhm.
and when I mean now they know how to talk, but when they were more little than now,
Mhm.
you know, they said like, I don't know, the bottle where they drink milk.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know it was uh, unintelligible what
All
they
right.
said, and the mother said, "Oh yeah, they asking for the bottle."
Okay.
How do you know? I mean, they are not saying a word.
Yeah, yeah.
And little kids tend to do this, that they name
Mhm.
things and only their parents understand.
Yeah, precisely, precisely. Because there is, but anyhow, that is an agreement within the home, which is a micro community. In that community, micro community, there is an agreement that whenever the kid says such and such a thing, that thing means something else. But what happens when they go into the outside world? It is incomprehensible, right? Nobody understands what they mean, right? So that's why we have a social agreement in the big community. And what happens, and that's why we have also, when we change the way of naming things, that language instantly becomes a dialect. We have started talking about dialects, accents are languages or not. What is the difference between a language, an accent, and a dialect? Did we mention? Sorry if I ask you, but I have too many groups and I don't remember what I said in each one of them. ¿Dijimos la diferencia entre language? Si no la
We
decimos.
talked
Yeah.
about
Espérate,
the
espérate que
difference
estoy
between
chequeando.
dialects and accents.
Espérate, que está acá. Es como si estuviese escribiendo, no sé. Y como si volvemos a, y ya que está relacionado con el tema, stone, ¿no? Como si estuviera carving a stone. Language. Hasta eso es lento, el typing. ¿A ustedes también se le hace lento? ¿O no?
No.
Ah, porque esta computadora quiere que la actualice a Windows 11 y yo no quiero porque si le llego a poner Windows 11 después voy a estar más perdida que ahora. Ahí está. Capaz que por eso se me lentifica, porque quiere que la actualice. Bueno, the difference, well, accent is easier, and I believe that we have commented briefly. Accent has to do basically with the particular pronunciation of a group, and the particular characteristics of pronunciation of a certain group. For instance, if we say, what is the Rosarino accent? We say, well, Rosarino tends not to pronounce final consonants. Like you say, ciudad, ciudad, vamos, vamos, right? We tend not to pronounce, to delete, elide the final consonants in the words. And we tend to use aspiration in when you have the S, the sound S is followed by a vowel. So we say lo hojo, la ho, la hora, right? That is a typical characteristic of Rosarino accent. Then you can start describing every single accent around the country, and you will see that there are many accents, many more than we may think of. It's not just porteño or norteño, norteño where, so there are very, very specific characteristics of every single area in Argentina. So those are different accents. Somebody joining in? Yes, somebody joining right now. Okay. Now, what is the difference between a dialect and a language? One of the differences is we call the degree. I'm going to type if I can. Degree. Sí, Ludmila.
I want to say that a dialect is when we are going to find the difference between vocabulary, grammar, and the lexis of a language. And a language is a system of communication used by people in a particular country or in a particular region in order to acquire communication.
Okay, good, good, good. That's right. Thank you for filling in the silence. Espérate, degree of mutual. Mutual. Ay, me pega un patadón ahí. Intelligibility. Sí, ahí está. Okay. Yes, you're right. Dialects, the difference, usually the difference is made between what is the dialect and what is an accent. Accent has to do with pronunciation only, whereas dialect has to do with pronunciation, lexis, and grammar. Basic differences in grammar. So when you say, is it a dialect or an accent? No, it's a dialect. Now, the issue comes when you want to define and differentiate a language from a dialect. Is it a different language or is it a dialect? Now, one of the ways of defining them is the degree of mutual intelligibility, right? That is to say, can people understand one another? We say, are they mutually intelligible or are they unintelligible? So, if the degree of mutual intelligibility is very low, we say that they're different languages. But there is, apart from that way of looking at things, you stop to think and you say, all right, but what is the degree of mutual intelligibility between Portuguese in Brazil and Spanish? Aren't they relatively intelligible? Relatively, right?
Yes.
Yes, many parts. Or between, if somebody speaks Italian slowly and Spanish, there is some degree of intelligibility. Now, if you compare some dialects within Italy, they're mutually unintelligible. The same happens if you think about some dialects in China. If you compare Mandarin Chinese with Cantonese Chinese, they say that they are totally unintelligible, but yet they are considered to be dialects and not languages. So here we have a problem. Again, in linguistics, we always have a problem. Now, apart from this question of mutual intelligibility, what is taken into account are the geographical boundaries. Geographical boundaries and the political organization, right? So we say Brazil is one country, therefore the language spoken there, we call it the language from Brazil, right? Okay. Now, if we take China, and China is one thing, so all the different dialects spoken within China, we say, okay, they belong to Chinese. So we take Chinese as a language, even though the dialects are not that mutually intelligible. You see? So there are two things that we take into account to sum up. Degree of mutual intelligibility, but at the same time, geographical and political issues, right? Is that clear?
Yes.
To me, the two best examples are Italy and China. Because in Italy, you have many dialects, but still they're said to be Italian. Even though people do not understand one another. Have you ever heard people
Yeah.
from Napoli speaking? It's a Napolitano. Have you ever heard? But speaking their Napolitano. See?
Yeah, they do. People from Rome do not understand
No,
Italian.
no, it's very difficult, very difficult. And they have particular words. They have obviously an accent which is totally different, and a number of things that makes their speech incomprehensible. If you have studied Italian and you go to Napoli, you totally frustrated because you cannot understand a thing they're saying, right? Okay.
Yeah, but even
But
though,
mhm,
sorry,
yeah,
no, I was thinking that even though, for example, Catalan is considered, I guess, a dialect,
no, a
it's,
language.
it's a language because they are a
Yes,
nation.
yes.
Okay.
And that is one of the, let's say, tools that people from Catalonia has, and the same as Basque, el vasco. ¿Mm? Y aparte pensemos, España, sí, o no, España. If you compare Spain to Argentina, is very small. But even so, Catalan is one language and Vasco is another language. They're not Spanish. ¿Eh? ¿Se entiende esto? O sea, el catalán y el vasco no son variaciones del español, son otros idiomas. ¿Sí? ¿Está?
Are they only considered another language because the people consider themselves a different nation? Because they are
Yes, it's
mutually
more than that
intelligible.
because they have yeah, but it goes beyond that because they also have their different grammar, their different way of writing. They have a lot of things apart from the political issue, and because of the identification, and also it has to do with the identification. If you feel identified or not, you see. And apart from these political issues, the political is like one thing, es como el huevo y la gallina, ¿no? ¿Qué fue primero, el huevo y la gallina? Is that because they have a particular grammar, a particular spelling, particular this, particular that, they say that they should be politically independent. But at the same time, they're kind of politically independent because they have their own language. It's like one thing leads to the other. That's why they're so much in trouble because they cannot find like a solution. Mm? Right? But anyhow, if you analyze each one of them, they differ. Uh, there's a very high level of difference between them. Mm? Right? Okay. I was once in Barcelona for one day only, pity because I couldn't stay any longer. But if you have heard somebody speaking Catalan, you cannot follow that much, can you?
No, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult. And mostly if they speak quickly, which of course they do on purpose so that you don't understand, right? Okay. Yes, whenever somebody speaks very quickly, one of the languages, because you so that you don't understand, the quicker. Also, it happens to some degree with Portuguese that I said before. Portuguese is relatively comprehensible, but if some people from Brazil, mostly the north, because the south is different, but in the north of Brazil, if they speak very, very quickly, you don't understand either if you don't speak Portuguese. And if you do not speak their variety of Portuguese, right? Okay. So it's a very complicated issue. Well, I don't know why I deviated from this question of arbitrariness because, yes, I remember. Because why do you call one thing one way or another? Is there anything in that thing that tells you that it should be called that way? And it even happens within not just across languages, but across varieties of language, Because, for instance, you think about Rosarino and Cordobés, no? See? They're called varieties of language. Podemos llamarlo accents o varieties of language. Language. ¿No? Bueno, if you go to Córdoba, you want to have, bueno, supuestamente tiene que decir language. Le escribe otra cosa ahí. Language. No es otra palabra, es language, varieties of language. Right. Okay. Now, if you go to Córdoba, you want to have breakfast, right? You get up in the morning, you prepare mate, whatever, coffee, whatever you want to have. You go to the bakery and you ask the baker, can I have some, o sea, en español, ¿me das unos bizcochos? ¿Le van a dar algo o no le van a dar nada? Van a Córdoba, van a la panadería y le dicen, ¿me da un bizcochito o me das un bizcocho? ¿Le van a dar algo o no le van a dar nada? Nadie fue a Córdoba a comprar bizcocho.
¿Te dan facturas?
No,
No me acuerdo.
porque
Entonces,
no saben lo que son los bizcochos. Va, sí saben, pero, Le llaman, alguien escribió, un Fernet. Sí, no, Fernet en la mañana. No. Está, como se dice, no dicen mamado o borracho, está, ¿cómo le dicen a los borrachos? Constanza, a ver, Constanza, yes.
No, justo con este tema de los bizcochitos,
Ujú.
me acuerdo cuando fui a Disney, mi coordinador era de Entre Ríos. Y un
Sí,
día no sé qué necesitaba y fui y le pido, ay, Emi, necesito fixo.
sí,
¿Qué? ¿Qué necesitas? Me dice,
sí.
fixo para pagar unas cosas que no sé qué. No, no sé lo que es fixo. ¿Cómo que no sabes
Ujú.
lo que es fixo? Encima yo no sabía en ese momento cómo explicarle de otra manera.
Claro,
Fixo, lo que pega, le digo, cinta adhesiva. Ah, me dice, pero ¿qué es fixo? No, no sé qué son esas cosas que dicen ustedes.
claro. Sí, lo mismo, bueno, volvemos después a lo de los bizcochos, pero a mí me pasó en el norte que quería una bandita elástica. Y le pedí una bandita elástica, todo parece que una bandita elástica y no hubo forma, o sea, una bandita elástica, aparte me explicaba una cosa para atar, o sea, no sé ya cómo explicarle. Dice, una gomita. Bueno, a ver, entre bandita elástica, gomita elástica, no hay mucha diferencia. Bueno, le resuelvo el misterio de Córdoba. Si van a Córdoba, no pidan bizcocho porque se van a morir de hambre, tienen que pedir criollito. Criollito. ¿Eh? Y sí, anda a comprar unos criollos, encima, criollito, no, criollito, lo mismo que un pollo, vamos con un pollo, no pollo, no, right? Okay. So you see that within the same language, different varieties also change the lexical items, but we don't call them dialects, right? They're not different dialects, they're the same, different varieties of the same language. Because there are many more things that have to change so that you call one way of speaking a dialect, right? So you see, it's not a dialect. Do you understand the differences? And besides, we don't have grammatical changes either, from Cordobés to Rosarino. Well, so this question of arbitrariness, and going back to arbitrariness, why is it that in Córdoba they call it criollito and here we call them bizcocho? It's the same thing. Well, it's similar, not exactly the same, but it's similar. Or bandita elástica y, ¿cómo se llama? Gomita. Y la que dijo Constanza era, ¿vos dijiste?
El fixo y la
Fixo.
cinta adhesiva.
Yo tampoco le hubiera dicho fixo, yo le hubiese dicho scotch. ¿No? Que la marca.
Sí, también me dijo eso, pero no, nosotros, bueno, yo soy de Colón, Buenos Aires, es fixo, de acá y de allá, por todos lados.
Claro, claro. Viste que también moviéndote un poquito ya se llama diferente, ¿sí? Pero en realidad si va a buscar el término que es más neutro sería cinta adhesiva. En realidad se llama cinta adhesiva.
Claro,
O la
claro.
pati, sí, tantas cosas que lo llamamos por la marca y no por el objeto en sí, ¿no? O vos decís, qué sé yo, me voy a comprar ¿qué otra cosa puede ser? Un quaker, trae un quaker, ¿eh? Y sí, la curita, lo mismo, y el quaker es marca Tres Arroyos. Sí, no, quaker es la marca, en realidad es avena lo que estamos comprando, ¿sí? Traigo quaker Tres Arroyos, y voy a decir, no, a ver, quaker es quaker, ¿sí? right? Que en realidad en inglés saben que se dice Quaker, ¿no? Saboras y tantas palabras. Hay un montonazo que se usa por... yo una vez le pregunté a un extranjero, porque la verdad que no sabía cómo se decían pañales en inglés. Yo le pregunté, ¿cómo se dice pañales? ¿Cómo se dicen pañales en inglés?
Diapers.
Diaper.
Sí, diapers. Very good. You know more than me. Bueno, I didn't know back then. And I asked the person, how do you call the thing that you put to a kid, blah, 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 blah. I say, pampers. Pampers. I didn't get the word either. I said, no, Pampers is a trademark. Well, but I don't really know how to call them. So not even a native, a native speaker of English knew the actual name of the object because he knew the trademark. And we call things by the trademark, right? But that is also an agreement as well, you see? So we go back to this question of arbitrariness. Arbitrariness is that there has to be an agreement among the community, right? Okay. Productivity. What about productivity? We are going to finish in a few minutes. And then we have cultural awareness, discreteness, duality. Right. Okay. So this question of productivity. Yes, Ludmila.
Here in productivity, we can see a great difference between human language and animals communication. And that is that the animal communication is fixed. It means that they provoke sounds in a way which is in that way and cannot be changed, or they cannot produce new of these ones. Whereas the human language is like infinitive. We can produce as many infinite, yes, in which we can produce as many statements or as many sentences as we can in order to communicate different things, new things, or whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. And we also give new names to new things, right? Okay, because for instance, what was an email? The word mail existed and has existed for a long, long time throughout the human history. But what is an email? And we needed a name for the thing that you send electronically, but we already had the word mail, so what did we do? We added the E.
It would be the same with WhatsApp. It's not send me a message, it's send me a WhatsApp. It's an example, for example.
Yeah, of course, yes, because we have this, the proactivity is the ability to create novel, well, she said novel utterances, which is infinite. We don't have a limit. Like we say, okay, no, this is the end of my proactivity. I will not produce or come up with new terms anymore. Language is changing constantly. And that's why when you do an analysis of language, you do an analysis and you have to say, all right, but what period of history are we studying? And because within one period of history, you have a number of lexical items, and then you change the period of history, and you may, apart from having new ones, you may have that some words changed the meaning with the passing of time. So we have this ability to create novel utterances or come up with new terms very easily. Yes, Alana.
Yeah, and that's why dictionaries are also updated every once in a while. They are constantly updated and new words are always added.
Yeah, precisely. And I had a student who was a lawyer. She died, and she used to buy the dictionary of La Real Academia Española every single year. She used to buy, I think she sold the previous ones, but every single year she bought the new version, the latest version of La Real Academia Argentina, Española. Why is that? Because in legal terms, if you use a word wrongly, you may be in trouble, right? So she needed the precise definition. Well, nowadays with this question, online issues, we can consult La RAE online, or we have online dictionaries, and you have like constant updates. But if you need to put it in the printed page, it's, yeah, definitely, you need to kind of come up with a new dictionary every now and then. There are periods. Now, the thing is that the periods are getting shorter and shorter, because many years ago, probably you produced a dictionary every 50 years. And then you had to produce a dictionary every 20 years. And now maybe you have to produce a dictionary every 5 years. And there may come a time when they don't produce dictionaries anymore, and because we consult online and that's it. And we don't have the printed page. Right. Okay. Now, we finish with this one. This is the last one, cultural awareness. That is very, very easy. What about this question of cultural awareness? I mentioned something earlier.
Teacher, in this chapter, it's called cultural transmission.
Our cultural transmission, right? Well, it's like more accurate, you know? The term cultural transmission is more accurate than cultural awareness, because you may be cultural aware, like I told you. Be careful and say, all right, now I'm in a different country. How is it that they behave in this country? That is to be cultural aware, right? But it's not necessarily the transmission. Cultural transmission implies, what is it that it implies?
To acquire the language in a culture, and not from your genes, for example.
From your?
Parental genes. I
It's
don't know
not a
if it is
genetic.
pronounced.
Yeah. No,
Yes.
it's the opposite of the genetic theory, that it's in our genes. Here you need somebody to have told you something. Well, you know that there are different theories. You cannot say that like it's a general truth. You know, there are some theories that believe in genetics, that it's in our genes, like you said, and there are others that say that is culturally transmitted. Yes, Oriana.
Yes, it says that there is no instinctive language, like, for example, a kitten in any part of the world, it will say meow. And humans don't. We learn language from the culture.
Yeah, precisely. Yes, Ludmila.
What they also said is that we can inherit some of the particular, I don't know how to say that, skills in order to acquire a language in general. Okay,
Mhm.
for example, part of our brain that works for that, and that is, but we cannot inherit a particular language. I cannot say, well, I was born and I'm going to speak in English. And then it gives the example of little children that are born in one place and then they are adopted by other parents in another country. So they are going to acquire the language, the which is taught in the environment in which they are raised.
Hmm. Yes, that's true. And that's why there's this question that somebody said, how is it that language originated? And somebody said orally. We say, yes, definitely orally. But in the old days, this question of cultural transmission was much more relevant, because, that's why there were the bards, and the ones who sang the songs, or the ones who, for instance, told the tales that we have heard about. Well, we don't know if he existed or not. Robin Hood and this and that, because why is it that they sang the stories? Because in that way it was more memorable for one generation to pass on to the next generation. So the origin of poetry and the origin of song was mostly for this question of passing on the language from one generation to the next. You see? So that was the way that, because how was it that the stories were passed on if there was no writing system
Orally.
in the first place? And then in the second place, when the writing system was finally invented, but very few people could read or write. Okay? Yes? Somebody wanted to say something?
No,
right?
I just said orally that when writing was not didn't exist, these things were transmitted orally.
Yeah, and even like I said before, when the writing system appeared, when there was a writing system in a historical period, even so, a very small minority could read or write. So the only way for the culture to be transmitted was orally. Okay, so we
Another
have to
thing,
finish. Yes.
sorry, I just want to add one thing. Another thing which is important to mention is that today, with all the means of communication and technology, is not going to replace that figure of social transmission. We need people talking around us in order to acquire the language. For example, a computer or a program who talk to us in a language is not going to make the acquisition possible.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Okay, we have to round up because you may have another subject. What do you do from now? Do you have face-to-face lessons or you don't have the next lesson?
We don't know actually.
Okay. A mí me pone verde, amarillo de todos colores. Estar en la nebulosa me pone de todos colores. Porque yo prefiero, definamos, ¿lo hacemos? No lo hacemos. Punto. Ok. Bueno, espérate, Oriana. Aguantame un segundito. Bueno, como para a cocinar. Ah, bueno, está bien. A las 10 de la mañana te pones, ¿qué va a hacer? ¿Un pucherito? ¿Qué te va a hacer? ¿Una cabeza de vaca te la va a meter? Si lo haces, hacelo. Bueno, ahora voy a chequear los mails también. Bueno, a ver, vamos a votar. Son 24 menos yo que soy, serían 23 personas. ¿Quién quiere que mañana sea la clase? Yo les voy a preguntar. ¿Quién quiere que la clase sea virtual o quién quiere que la clase sea presencial? Vamos por la clase virtual. Digan yo ahí en el chat. No, pónganle yo en el chat, porque si no se me hace un bodrio. A ver. Pongan virtual, virtual. Y contamos. A ver. Estamos votando virtual. Díganme cuando terminen todos. Pero Oriana, ya hablamos, Porcentaje para balotage. Estamos como en Francia. A ver, espérate. Vamos a contar. A ver, ¿ya contaron ustedes? Yo se me da lenteja, tengo que contar. ¿Cuánto tenemos? ¿Cuánto dijeron yo? ¿Contaron? ¿Alguien contó? Porque esta computadora de acá que me.
20.
Ah, 20 people.
Yo conté 23, no sé, capaz que cuento más.
Bueno, pero la mayoría.
22 here said no.
Sí, la mayoría, definitivamente.
Bueno, entonces, por mayoría, es una democracia, hacemos virtual. El que se le complica, chicos, si a alguno se le complica o tiene algún problema, bueno, es como cuando faltan a clase, le tienen que pedir al compañero que le pase los apuntes. O sea, tampoco se maten, no quiero ser como el causante de ningún tipo de accidente, pero esperen que le voy a pasar, este es un link al azar, porque claro, yo no se los puedo pasar porque qué odio que tengo esto que no se lo puedo pasar por el campus. Les voy a pasar un link de una de las lecciones de YouTube de Psicolinguística del año pasado. Espera. Que en caso, pero yo como agarré a mitad de año, no tengo todos los temas dados. Por ejemplo, este tema no está online, ¿sí? Pero no me acuerdo qué tema. ¿Tres balazos? ¿Quién le da 3 balazos? Milagro.
Y pasa que por el grupo habíamos puesto, antes habíamos hablado que la mayoría no tiene posibilidad de ir y dijimos, bueno, el que vota, que hay que ir 3 balazos, un balazo a cada uno.
No, Pero se me pasaron al bando de los monos, por favor, chica.
Hay que
Bueno,
hacer sacrificios.
no, Oriana, ¿qué querías decir vos? Vos estabas primero. Oriana.
Sí, que en realidad en el capítulo este que leímos en la otra edición del libro, está en Properties, también está Reflexivity y Duality.
Bueno, eso lo vemos mañana, lo terminamos de ver mañana, ¿sí?
Está bien, pero sería parte, digamos, de las propiedades, aunque no esté en el otro capítulo del libro.
Sí, obvio, o sea, en Arroyo Seco, bien, bueno, dale, si tenés, hace quién es hace. Le dije que traten de poner nombre porque no sé quién es hace. Caminando, venite caminando.
Angelina.
¿Eh? ¿Quién es
Y
hace?
Angelina. Yo,
Ponete
Angelina.
Angelina mañana cuando te conectes o cuando sea que te conectes, poné tu nombre porque es difícil llamarlo, no sé
Lo,
qué, cómo te
lo
llama.
que pasa es que le saqué mi nombre y apellido porque me cansé de recibir así todas scams, todas por email, entonces estoy cansada de recibir, por eso le puse AC nada más. Ay, sí, por Hotmail también. Todo el día constantemente recibo cosas, te piden datos o por celular, entonces ya me cansé. Para cuidar un
Pero
poco mi...
que vos ponés tu nombre, ¿por eso te pasa eso?
No quiero que sea que sepan mi nombre, ni mi apellido, nada,
No,
porque he
todo
mandado,
bien,
por
pero si vos
ejemplo...
lo ponés acá en el aula, ponele, acá cuando ingresás, ¿no lo podés poner tu nombre? Cuando ingresás al chat, digo, y después lo borrás.
Ah, sí, podría ser.
Pregunto. No, ¿saben por qué, chicos? Ni para ser densa ni nada, sino porque cuando me refiero a ustedes no sé cómo, no sé cómo se llaman. Entonces, sí, uno que me mandó de Facebook una invitación me puse enriquecido con calcio, se llama el tipo, enriquecido con calcio. Y yo le puse, querido Enrique, qué sé yo, y me dice, me llamo Orlando. ¿Y cómo querés que adivine que te llamó Orlando si vos te pones enriquecido con calcio? ¿Qué sé yo cómo te llamas? Yo vi a Enrique y dije, Enrique, qué sé yo, bueno, listo. Bueno, okay, tomorrow same link, right? Okay, same link, and if you can join, okay, if you cannot, ask your partner, as if it were face-to-face, but you missed the lesson, right? Okay, yes?
Ok.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
see you. Beso,
Bye
bye.
bye.
Y si hace
Bye,
el
see
gorrito
you.
Agustín,
Bye. Bye.
Agustín Frisa invita otro día.